So C major bias. So now, of course, when the piano is in the key of C, you end up with a lot of songs played in, the key of C, of course, and it starts to sound like those are what they call like the natural notes, which again puts an artificial emphasis on them. Whereas if we were looking at it from a modern perspective, now that we have all these other tools that we can use, we probably don't want to get that in our mind. We don't want to think like, I need to learn this scale before I can learn the other scales, when all the scales are basically the same in structure, right? And is the idea. So most series starts with the C major because it's the simplest on the piano. So as a result, the entire system is built around an arbitrary visual simplification. So why hasn't it been widely used? So why don't we use a numbering system? Inertia. So Western music theory was locked into the naming long before. So now, before we had computers and all this stuff, this was in place. So once again, it's in the textbooks, it's in the theory. It's just like if you have a general ledger account that already has the numbering system, you don't want to change it because then you can't compare it to the prior period as easily. It becomes messy. So that's what the problem is. But now we have the ability to use computers and all this other stuff. So now the question is, would making it easier be useful? And if it would, then do the pros outweigh the cons? And I feel like the pros of just simply adding numbers clearly outweighs the cons just for you as a learner to learn it, because the only added problem you have to do is to be able to transpose between the number and the letter. I'd have to come up with some numbering system and then be able to transpose between key change between the letter and the number, allowing me to do simple math. So that would be the general idea. Now I want a quick touch on the numbering system itself. So you can argue for different numbering systems. If you're a coder or something like that, you're going to say maybe you should have made the A 0 and then you should have numbered it up from 0. Now, why is that often the case? Maybe if you're in a coding kind of system, because you want to number you want to number the steps. So that would mean if I go from 0, it would be a step to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and so on. That would be the general way that you would do it. Or you might say, I should start with the C as number 1, because historically C has been kind of like the center point, even though it's not the A, which is the first letter of the alphabet. So what you would think, if C was their master 1, why didn't they make it A, you would think, So you could say I should make C either the 1 or the 0 maybe, and then count up from there. So different software might use different conventions. So I don't know what the exact best convention is. I argue for A, or I used A as 1, because I think that's the easiest for most people to convert to, although they still have problems. So because if they go to the 2, you would think the 2 would be a B, because if you numbered the alphabet, it would be a B, but now you got to sharpen a flat, so there's no way to get past some kind of messiness with the numbering system. But I just think it's pretty easy to just go 1 through 12 on the numbering system. I don't see any problem with the off by 1 issue that kind of coders will have, but maybe there's an issue with it. I think that any numbering system is going to give you at least some simple math, and this one I think is a logical one because A, you would think would be A1, you would think would be the logical place, matching it to the alphabet to start off with. Now that off by 1 problem, however, is an issue that we will come into when we get to the chord creation and when we get into scales, because what we'll create from this is, you'll remember, the next layer, which will be the actual chords in a scale, which that's the point where I instead of renumbering that system, I'd like to give it a nodal numbering system, right? And so we'll get into that basically later, but just want to point that out now. So guitar's a lead instrument. Spreadsheet learning is now available. So changing the system would have meant overhauling sheet music, textbooks, and education. So that becomes the issue. So remember, there's multiple reasons why that's the issue. One's a legitimate reason, because I want to make it easy to communicate. So I want to make things, from my perspective, I want to make things as transparent so as many people can interact with it as much as possible. If you change the system, then the argument is you can't interact with the past anymore because they have different systems. That's a legitimate argument. But nowadays, of course, you have ways to transpose things. So in this case, I would say you want to learn both. But if there is a change, you can clearly use ChatGTP or something like that to make the change.